Okay, so good morning, everyone. Greetings from Panama. My name is Karin Lopez, the Regional Admin Boss Coordinator for the LAC region. So I'm based in Panama, as I said a few seconds ago. So nice to have you here. This is our sixth session. Okay, this one is on the Inclusive ICT hosting accessibility online events. And well, of course, we have the great Heba Koliv with us, which is going to be guiding us through this session, and which has been guiding us for the past 6 weeks now, if I'm not mistaken, Heba. Okay, will be guiding us on this webinar, and of course, you'll have the possibility of asking all type of questions to her. So over to you, Heba.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's always a pleasure to be with you here today in the webinars. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues, wherever you are. Welcome to the sixth webinar on Inclusive ICT, this hosting accessible online meetings. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and transcribed, and we will be sharing the recording afterwards. Also, if you have any questions, throughout the webinar, you can feel free to write down the questions in the chat. We will have some interactive questions in the middle of the webinar where you could, we will be asking you to interact. So we will allow you to unmute yourselves and share with us in due course. So today we are going to discuss, as I said, hosting accessible online meetings. But let me just give you a little bit of an introduction about myself. If we can go to the next slide, Karen. My name is Heba Kholib. I'm based in Alexandria in Egypt. I'm an Egyptian person with visual impairment, and I'm a screen reader user. I've worked in the field of disability inclusion for 20 years now in organizations, national and international organizations inside and outside Egypt. I have a master's degree from the University of Birmingham in inclusive education. I've worked with DCO, UNDCO HQ as a disability inclusion consultant within business operations since August 2022. So now, this is the next slide, please. This is the agenda that we're going to go over very quickly. We will start by some basic definitions about disability and accessibility, and also we will talk about accessible communications. Then we will move to discuss hosting accessible online meetings in two of the main platforms that are widely used, which are MS Teams and Zoom Cloud Meetings. And we will highlight the accessibility features in both platforms. Next slide, please. So according to the CRPD, persons with disabilities are people with long-term physical, sensory, mental, or intellectual impairment, which in interaction with various barriers can hinder their full and effective participation in the society on an equal basis with others. And as you know, the CRPD did not provide a definition of the disability itself, because disability results from this interaction between the impairment and the barriers. So if we have a barrier-free environment with no physical or digital or attitudinal or communicational barriers, the disability will not exist. So according to the UNDIS, or United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, there's a formula which explains the interaction between the impairment and the barrier. So this formula says that impairment plus barrier, this is what creates the disability. But impairments plus accessibility, this will not create the disabling conditions and the disabling situations. So in terms of digital environments and hosting accessible online meetings, as you know, that online meetings have provided a platform for people to work remotely and overcome the geographical barriers that we face a lot of the time. But at the same time, we have to ensure that the platforms we're using to conduct our online meetings are accessible, and we are adopting the accessibility measures and reasonable accommodation. Next slide, please. So that's the definition of accessibility. So if I want to call something that is accessible, this software or this service or this building has to be reachable, usable, understandable, approachable by everyone regardless of their abilities and regardless of their needs. I was trying to work with a new software on my smartphone just 2 days ago, and I found out that the screen reader can only read the title of the software without reading anything else on the screen. So I wasn't able to use the software, and I wasn't able to use a service that the software provides. I had to give up, and I had to search for another software. So if a person cannot reach this service or this software, that means that this service or software is inaccessible. Next slide, please. So according to the CRPD, accessible communication is any form of communication like spoken language or written, or sign language or braille, or any form of communication, whether delivered orally or tactilely or visually, to people with different abilities and different needs. So for example, people with hearing impairment might be using sign language as their first language and the main form of communication. They might be, others with hearing impairment might be using lip reading and spoken language as their main communication modality. People who are deafblind might be using another form of sign language, which we call tactile signing. So they will be touching the hand of the person signing instead of seeing it with their eyes. And we have to be mindful of all these communication modality in order to make sure that they are available for use with people with different abilities. Next slide, please. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, it becomes something like a new normal for everyone to have a hybrid work modality or even remote working modalities. So the blooming of the online collaborations platforms emerged with the COVID-19. Because this flexible work modality has proved merit on a number of frontiers, it's still continue to be used by agencies and organizations. That's why we have to ensure the accessibility of all these platforms that we're using and that we are conducting our meeting in an accessible format. Next slide, please. So in your opinion, this is an interactive discussion. In your opinion, what are the barriers that could exist that would make it hard or that could hinder the full and effective participations of persons with disabilities in online meetings? Please feel free to write down your question, your comments in the chat, and my colleague and friend Karen is going to kindly read your comments. Or if you want to have the floor, please raise your virtual hand and we will allow you to unmute yourself.
Colleagues, any comments? Please feel free to use the chat or raise your hand. Okay, the question that the Heba was asking is, what do you think are the barriers in having these type of events, okay, on online webinars, for example? Of course, focusing to disability. Anyone?
Like if you have a person with a speech impairment, what do you think could be done? For instance, what could make the participation of this person restricted? Or if you have a person with ADHD, or if you have a person with a visual impairment, what do you think are the barriers that could arise when this person is participating in an online meeting?
Okay, there's a comment in the chat that says internet connectivity, as it might affect the audio and video levels. There's also a hand raised. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Karen, please go ahead.
Okay, Carolina, go ahead.
Karina, I think the other participants, not just the people with the impediment, we are not prepared to be inclusive. We don't think about the others. We just prepare the meeting without thinking how to how to present or how to be prepared for other people that are not to be inclusive.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Like-
basically, you're saying that one of the challenges we have is that we are not well prepared on how to do this, basically.
Yeah.
Anybody
like
else?
we're not
Oops.
accommodating for them. That's what you need. That's what you mean, right? Like we don't have the necessary knowledge to be able to accommodate with their needs.
Right.
Okay, there's also comments in the chat that says maybe the lack of live transcript or translation. Hard of hearing people may have difficulties in an online meeting. I know that in Google Meets, they have a resource that put automatic caption. Captioning of the PowerPoint presentations at a webinar not always available. Those are other comments coming in the chat.
All right. Thank you very much, colleagues, for mentioning these valuable points, and we will elaborate more in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So we have in MS Teams a lot of some accessibility measures that we can take in order to ensure the accessibility of the meeting. I will explain them in words, but after we finish the talking about MS Teams, I will show it to you. I will share my screen and show these options for you. So the first option is for persons with hearing impairment, as our colleague said. They have to have sign language interpreter, and the video of the sign language interpreter has to be spotlighted and having high priority. So if the meeting organizers did not enable this option, the MS Teams is providing a feature for the meeting attendees to enable this option themselves. So if they go to the settings icon in MS Teams, they can have an option called sign language mode, where they can manage signers by selecting specific video feeds and assigning a sign language interpretation role to them. So these video feeds will be highlighted. Another option is to enable live captions, even if it was not enabled by the organizers. Attendees can still enable this option. And the other option is disabling animations or turning off animations. And this could be really helpful for screen reader users and also for people with visual limitations and people on the autism spectrum, because as we said early in the previous webinars, that flashing objects and moving objects can trigger seizure reactions to people who are neurodiverse. Next slide, please. So in the MS Teams, every meeting has a number of stakeholders or participants with different roles. So we have the organizers, and we have the presenters, and we have the attendees. And each of these people have a role to play in order to ensure the accessibility of the online meetings. For the organizers, they have to turn on recording, transcription, and live captions. Make sure when you're scheduling any meeting or a webinar that these options are enabled. Muting the notification is very helpful for screen reader users, because the way the screen reader work is whenever any notification pop up on the screen reader will just announce, the person X has left, person Y has joined, and so on. So you can imagine that this could be very distracting when I'm a person with visual impairment trying to concentrate and focus on the person who is speaking, and the screen reader is announcing all the chat messages, everyone leaving and joining and rejoining the meeting. This could be very distracting. So muting notification is really helpful. Turning together mode on is very helpful as well, because it will set up a unified virtual background for everyone in the meeting. This will reduce the visual clutter in the meeting, or reduce the visual stimulation and make the presenters more easier to see. So the organizer can choose a dark mode as a virtual background option. so that there would be a high level of contrast between the background and the presenters. Pinning and spotlighting are two other options that can help prioritize specific video feeds for participants during the online meetings. There's a difference between pinning and spotlighting. When you pin a video, you pin this video feed for you only, not for everyone in the meeting. So a person with hearing impairment might, if we have more than one sign language interpreter, for instance, a person can choose the sign language which is more catered for their needs. We might have two sign language interpreter. One is using an international sign language and one is using another form of sign language. So people with hearing impairment can choose who to pin. But the spotlight option, the organizers use this video to spotlight this specific person for everyone in the meeting. The organizers or the presenters can choose up to 7 video feeds during the meeting to spotlight them. The use of card caption or professional caption is another important feature that we can use if possible, if we can find the professional captioners. Why? Because the automated live captions do not always convert the words accurately. When I was trying to clean up the transcribed version of the webinar recordings and any meeting recordings I'm attending, I found a lot of mistakes in the automated live captioning service. And of course, a person with hearing impairment wouldn't be able to, if this person has no residual hearing and cannot read the lips, this person will not know that the information being presented is inaccurate. So if you have live caption, automated live caption service, and you don't have an automatic live caption, a professional caption in place, you can assign someone during the meeting to follow the automated live caption service and to correct any of the misinformation that is being presented during the meeting, to make sure that persons with hearing impairment do not miss out on any information. Enabling the fit to frame option is important for sign language interpreters to be easy to see, because the fit to frame option will ensure that their face and their hands and their upper body is clearly visible and within the frame of vision, so that they will be clearly seen. You can announce accessibility options with the housekeeping tips, as we did in our meeting today. Like, we announced that the meeting is being recorded, and we have set up a mechanism for participants to direct their questions or comments, like to use the chat, for instance. We have to be mindful of some options available in MS Teams, because they are not very accessible, and we will talk about them in due course. Blurring background could be another option that is used by a lot of users, and although this is very useful and you can inform the participants to blur their background, you have to be mindful of that this too much blurring of backgrounds might not cause any distraction for persons who are neurodiverse or persons who have some visual limitations. So if the background is too blurry, they wouldn't be able to see clearly. Next slide, please. So now we move to the presenters. What should the presenters do to ensure that they are presenting accessible presentations in their online meetings? First, they have to slow down their pace when they are speaking. And I can tell you it's not easy to do that, but we can try to do it from time to time and to remind ourselves to slow down pace when we are speaking, so that if sign language interpreters are present, they will be able to translate, or if there are professional or automated live caption service, to be able to interpret the words accurately. Like we did with our colleagues today, our colleague Karen was reading any incoming chat messages or comments. So the presenters in the online meetings have to be sure to read aloud any incoming comments or chat messages. If possible, you can describe yourself and your surrounding, and you can turn on your camera. Today, I'm not turning on my camera, unfortunately, but as a presenter, please try to turn on your camera if you can. If your camera is turned on, try to sit directly facing the camera with your face clearly illuminated, and be sure or be aware that a light source would come from in front of you, not from your back. Because if you are backlighted, this will create a lot of shadows and will not enable persons who are lip readers to read your lips, and will not make sign language interpretation visible. Now we move to the next slide. What can the attendees do in order to make the MS Teams meeting accessible? They can pin the participants' video, as we said. They can hide their own video. For example, if I'm a person with some usable vision, I might see that the screen looks distracting with my video on. So I can turn off my turn off any incoming video and turn off my video in order to concentrate more on the person who is speaking or presenting. They can mute notifications as well if they can, in order not to distract themselves. And they can blur their background, and when they are answering a question or when they are commenting, it's helpful if they start by saying their name. And then after they finish their intervention, they would say over to and say the next person's name as well, the presenter's name, for instance, because these names will be captured by the automated live captioning service or the sign language interpreters. Next slide, please. So before going into Zoom, I'd like to show you the accessibility features that I was telling you about in MS Teams. I'll try to do that. Let's hope it will work.
So I'll stop sharing, Heba. Yes, so you can take the screen, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm stopping sharing now then.
So I hope now that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Let me go to the Teams. Now I'm in the Teams window. All I have to do is to click on the settings.
You're on your calendar. You're in Teams, but on your calendar. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach. Oh, the screen reader is refusing to cooperate, but we are trying. Yes, here it is. So I clicked on the settings. There's another settings icon. I will click on that. And there you would have an accessibility option here. And this option has three options inside it. So the first option is prioritize signers on the screen. And this option can be, as I said, can be made available by the attendees, not only by the organizers. All you have to do is, as an attendee, is to click on manage signers, and then you would be able to add people from the participants, add their video feeds, and they will be prioritized as sign language interpreters. So that's the first option. Oh, I closed the settings. I have to reactivate it again. The second option is always show captions in my meetings. And if you enable this option, even if the live captions are not enabled by the organizer as an attendee, you would be able to enable this option. The third option is turning off animation, as I said, and this is very helpful for users who, individuals who are neurodiverse or persons using screen readers, or persons with visual limitations. So these are the accessibility features that are available. Also, I want to show you that MS Teams is providing keyboard shortcuts. Let me show you how to get to them. So these keyboard shortcuts can be accessed by anyone. You can send them in advance to if you have a person with a disability who is a screen reader user and you would like to send them the keyboard shortcuts before the meeting, so they will familiarize themselves with how to use the app. And the Office Accessibility Center, a lot of accessibility options that you can use and explore. Would you like to share your screen back, Karen?
Yes, I'll share now. Now, a quick question, Hera, because you can also do this directly from the meeting, right? I mean, if you are the participant, you can, while you're in the meeting, you can still go into the meeting options and settings. That can also work. I'm
Yes,
just thinking,
but
yeah, okay.
yeah, I don't know. Well, the way I have tried it is with this accessibility option. As an organizer, I know I can enable the live captions and I can spotlight some videos, video feeds and on all that, but I didn't try it as an attendee. I only tried it as an organizer. So if any of you have practiced with this option and would like to share with us your comments, that would be really, really great.
If I may.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm going to share my screen. I mean, I'm sharing the presentation, but let me just bring in my screen and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so here I have, for example, the screen for the meeting. So we have the three dots here. I'm in the meeting, of course. We have the three dots. And if I go into settings, I have accessibility here option. And if I open that, I have also the possibility as a participant to open the sign language and the caption. I don't have the mute notification or as you had it priorly, Heba. Okay, but I have the option of bringing inside the meeting, also bringing the hearing and the caption. So I also wanted to share this with the colleagues for them to know they can also do that while they're in the meeting as a participant.
Yes,
and Carolina has also confirmed on the chat box that she can also activate the captions as a participant.
Perfect.
Yes, from the accessibility option in the settings, yes, you can do it as a participant. You can do it even if you're not the organizer. I meant that I'm not sure that in the meeting itself, in the meeting options dialog box, whether the attendees are or can modify the options in the meeting itself. That's what I'm not sure of.
And Heba, we found a new option here, which is used as a translator. This I didn't know.
Yes.
We're learning every day. That's a good thing.
Yes, exactly. And in the meeting options, you can find also another option for professional live captions. It's called API captioning or professional captioning service or third-party captioning service. You can find this option in the meeting option of the meeting itself. So if you do not want to use the live caption, automated live caption service, and you have a professional live captioner, you can enable it from the meeting options. All right, that's great. Yes,
just let me, well, we have the comments in the chat as Roberta said. So yeah, people thanking for the tip. Also, as it works for translator, as Roberta was saying, and yes, colleagues confirming on the caption. So I think we're all good. Thank you. Thank you for the tip. We definitely are learning a lot today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm learning as well, so I'm enjoying it so much. All right. So now there are some features in the online meetings in MS Teams, like the whiteboards. The whiteboard feature, unfortunately, is not accessible. So when you have any polls or voting that you want to do, please try to use the chat as an alternative option for screen reader users to provide their comments. And also, if you are using any slide sharing online collaboration platform like Mentimeter, be sure that this is accessible. For example, Mentimeter is not accessible, not for me as a person with visual impairment, and not for a person who is neurodiverse, because the content flashes very quickly, and this could trigger seizure reactions for them. There's another online slide sharing platform, which is called Slido, which is more accessible because the items do not flash too much, and this could be good. Now, before going into the Zoom, do you have any questions in MS Teams?
Colleagues, questions for Teams? Okay, somebody's asking, what about Kahoot? Do you know if it's accessible?
Yes, Kahoot is actually accessible with the screen readers, either as an organizer or a person who is initiating the quizzes, or as a participant for me if I want to answer and participate in the quiz. But if you want to use Kahoot, you should give some time, extra time, in order for the person who is a screen reader user to copy the code and select the link and pasted it in their browser and enter the code. It's better to provide any links for the Kahoot or for the Slido in an email message in advance, not in the chat of the meeting itself, because sometimes screen reader users would have difficulty copying links that are shared in the chat. So be sure to provide that in an email message in advance. I hope that answered your question. And now we will discuss the Zoom. The Zoom software has more or less the same options like MS Teams. So for example, next slide, please. For example, it has enabling automatic or professional captioners. It can spotlight video feeds of certain participants like sign language interpreters. It can it can make users manually select the breakout rooms. And this option is available in Teams as well. And this is very important option because if you opted for the automatic breakout room selection, you wouldn't be sure that the sign language interpreters are in the same room as persons with hearing impairment. So always try to manually select distributing participants to the different breakout rooms to make sure that the sign language interpreters are in the same room as persons with hearing impairment. Also, when you're presenting, you can follow the same procedure of slowing down your pace when speaking, and enable always show meeting controls option so that the meeting attendees can enable live captions for themselves, can spotlight some video feeds if they want, can mute notifications, and this option is very helpful. I use it a lot when I use Zoom. And participants upon entry is very helpful because screen reader users, as you have noticed, take a little bit more time to access and activate the controls and access the features on their screen. So if you do not enable the unmute option, it might take them some time to mute themselves. Sending the keyboard shortcuts either for Zoom or Teams in advance is very helpful because this would enable users to familiarize themselves with the software. Describing any visual content is very helpful, and this is actually something that we can actually adopt. When you are sharing the content in the screen, a screen reader user will not be able to read the content of the slides you're sharing.
So if you're sharing some screen content different from what you are describing verbally, be sure to read it out loud. Provide instructions on how participants can ask questions, and setting up a fixed mechanism for them to share their comments is very useful. And sending any resources and any comments by email after the presentation is very useful, as we said, because accessing chat messages might not be the best options. The Zoom polling feature is not accessible, so please feel free to limit the use of it. And if you have any annotations, be sure to read them out loud. Sharing the recording and the presentation is very useful and helpful for users with disabilities. And if you sit directly facing the camera, that would help also persons who are deaf and hard of hearing to see you and read your lips. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question of what is meant by cloud meeting.
Sorry, Karen, can you please repeat?
Yes, there's a question asking what do we mean when we say cloud meeting?
That's the name of the Zoom software, and what we mean by the cloud meeting is that this meeting is conducted on the cloud or online. So the cloud storage is any content which is stored on the internet on a remote server provided by the online meeting platform, either Microsoft or Zoom.
Thank you.
I really apologize for the noise. We have some construction work near our building, so I hope that this is not distracting you.
We don't hear it, by the way.
Oh, that's great, because I was concerned that you are hearing the noise. All right, that's great. So if we move to the next slide now, there are some accessibility measures that we have to take into account before the meeting starts. So for example, we have to ensure that the registration links are accessible, meaning that if you have a registration form, make sure that the form fields have descriptive text labels associated with them in order to enable screen reader users to understand the form field that they are filling and to put in the correct information. Also, be sure that your links are correctly labeled. In the registration form, try to make the mandatory fields as little as possible because you might have some people with mobility impairments who find it difficult to use the keyboard to type in information. And make sure your forms have an autocomplete feature, meaning that you are able as a user to copy and paste information from different documents in your registration form, so that it would make it easier for persons with disabilities to register. You can choose a descriptive event name for your online meeting to be sure that persons with disabilities understand what this meeting is about. You can contact the presenters to see how they would like to be identified as and addressed. And starting your meeting a little bit early, a few minutes in advance, would enable persons with disabilities to enter the meeting and ask any questions and get familiarized with the software so that the meeting will run smoothly. Do not use color coding as the only method of distinguishing information inside your registration form. So for example, if you have a mandatory field and this field displays an error message if the user did not fill in the information required, be sure that this message is delivered not only by color, but also by text that can be read by screen readers. Next slide, please. Also, before the online meeting, be sure to include a question about the required reasonable accommodation if you want if you asking users about any accommodations they would like to be provided, and assigning an accessibility focal person that could accommodate and coordinate the incoming requests from persons with disabilities and provide the necessary reasonable accommodations would be really good. If possible, send the meeting presentation in advance. I know that might not be exactly easy to do because we are all doing sometimes last minute changes and so on for our presentations, but try to do it if possible. As we said, if using in any of the interactive platforms, make sure to test these platforms with users with disabilities before the meeting to make sure of their accessibility. During the meeting, next slide, please. During the meeting, always try to explain the logistics of any questions or comments that the users would direct. Keep a list of questions for the presenters, and if the audience are quiet, because sometimes in the online meeting we would find that the level of intervention is not as users or attendees might not be as engaged as in the physical meetings. Repeating the questions or incoming comments is very helpful. Make sure to do that during the meeting. And be sure to provide contact information as a follow-up procedure for meeting attendees to be able to contact you afterwards. Next slide, please. So this is an exercise that you can do at your own pace, at your own time. You can try to schedule a new meeting and play around with the options. As we said in the meeting options, try to enable live captioning services, spotlighting the videos, sharing, exploring the keyboard shortcuts, either for Zoom or for the MS Teams, in order to be familiar with it. After the meeting, next slide, please. After the meeting, make sure that all the follow-up forms and surveys include a question about accessibility to measure the level of satisfaction in this regard, and make sure all the follow-up contact forms and emails and documents that you are sending to users are accessible. Some people might ask the question, should we use Zoom or should we use MS Teams? Well, it depends on the participants. Sometimes, in general, Zoom interface is a little bit easier, because the MS Teams is not only an online meeting platform, but an online collaboration platform with the sharing files and having teams and channels and so on. So it has a lot of options and a lot of learning to do. But Zoom Text is quite easier when it comes to the interface of it. Well, that's all from my part. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to us now in the chat, or raise your virtual hand.
Colleagues, questions to Heba? Comments? Please feel free to write your questions in the chat or raise your hand and we'll enable the mic. There's a comment here, very good presentation. I learned a lot today.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, doesn't seem so.
All right, so if we move to the next slide, I'd like you to write down in the chat, what are your main takeaways from today's session? Did this session meet your learning outcomes, expectations that you were hoping to, or the knowledge that you were hoping to gain from this session today? This is the first question.
Okay, there's additional comments here that I'm going to read while they write their comments. So it was super clear, a nice presentation. I'm happy. Thank you. A lot of colleagues saying thank you. Thank you for the useful information. I will definitely share this with my team and communication group. Thank you for the very informative presentation.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you, Karen, for reading the comments and for all your support. All right, the second question that I would like to raise here today, what are your immediate actions that you are going to take after the end of this session? You can set a small goal for yourself that you will follow in order to ensure from your part that any meeting, any online meeting you conduct are accessible. Because as we say, accessibility is not only the responsibility of the accessibility focal person or the UNDIS focal person, but the accessibility is a responsibility of everyone in the team. So what are your immediate actions?
There's a comment about the takeaway that you were asking before. So somebody wrote, I have to explore the accessibility options on other IT tools.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
exactly.
also comments here. Thank you for the presentation. We also share with communication officer and team. And there's another comment. How can you make sure that websites and online resources are accessible?
Yes, thank you so much. Ensuring the accessibility of the online resources is the key in order to ensure the full and effective inclusion of persons with disabilities in our interconnected world.
There's
You're
a comment
exactly
on.
right.
Sorry
yes,
to
please
interrupt.
go ahead. No, please go ahead.
There's a comment on how they will apply it. And from now on, I'll check accessibility and enable before setting meetings. The comment, but based on that question.
That is great. That is great, and I wish you all the best of luck in promoting disability inclusion and accessibility forward. And we hope that a lot of us would do that and would ensure that on our online platforms are accessible and our online meetings, I mean, are accessible.
Another comment, main takeaway, explore the various accessibility options and application. I will ensure to check in with persons with disabilities who are joining meetings to find on their meeting needs to determine which settings are needed for meetings. This is very helpful as I'm trying to enhance our implementation of the Global Disability Communication Strategy.
Thank you so much, colleague, for sharing your takeaways and your action points. That was really great.
Any other comments, questions to Heba? Let's take advantage that we have her here with us. There's another comment. Oops, let me go back. Another comment that says, we do a lot of online wellness promotion, health talks for our staff. I will share the information with my team on Monday so that we all ensure we are promoting disability and inclusion.
Thank you so much for your enthusiasm. Yes, sorry.
Sorry. Most of the time, concerning to accessibility, what comes to their mind is only construction of ramps. But today I understand that accessibility, I understand that accessibility has a broader meaning.
Exactly. Most of some people might think, okay, if I want my UN house to be accessible, then I would provide a ramp on the entrance and an accessible toilet, and then I've done my part, which is of course not the case. Like, for example, I've been accessing a lot of websites during my career life. So a lot of the people saying, oh, my website has a software that can read. I will provide an out loud read option for the screen, or my website is accessible for screen reader users. But persons with disabilities are a lot more than just people who are using screen readers. So if we want to ensure web accessibility or accessibility of our digital platforms and documents and web pages, we have to ensure that they are accessible for everyone. And that requires a lot of learning and a lot of testing from our side. But once we learn it, this will be like a habit for us, and it will transform the lives of a lot of people with disabilities.
Thank you, Heba. So there's no other comments nor hands raised. So I'll move to the next slide. And here you have, colleagues, additional videos and resources. You'll have access to the presentation. You also have access to the recording. And of course, you can go into this different additional videos and resources to learn a little bit more and to see how you can use them or do your meetings more accessible for people with disabilities. We have also a feedback form. We'll be very thankful if you have there the QR code. So if you can help us in completing, this feedback form in order for us to see what needs to be improved in these sessions. We're having weekly sessions on disability inclusion and of course, DCO always works in having all type of webinars for the colleagues around the globe. So whatever feedback you can provide us on how we can improve this is greatly appreciated. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes so you can scan the QR code, and then you can also complete it. I see Roberta in the chat box has also shared another form, so you can also use that one. Or Roberta, just to clarify, should they use the one you sent in the chat, or can they use the one here on the?
It's the same, Karina.
Okay.
I just copy on the chat the link to make it easier.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can also have the use of the link. Perfect. And the upcoming webinars, as you know, we have a series of several webinars. As we'll still have, we're on number 6 now. We still have 4 to go. Okay, the next 4 weeks. So here you also have the access to them so you can register. So the webinars are on a Wednesday and a Friday, different time zones, basically, so everybody has access to participating to one or to the other. And of course, the recordings are always there. So if you want to go back to them, or you want to share them with other colleagues in your office, please feel free to share with all your team. The more people we are aware about this, well, the better we're going to get into into disability and inclusion. Good. So any other comments, questions before we close? Heba, do you want to make any other comment? Do the closing?
I just want, yes, yes, please. I just want to thank the audience, of course, for joining us here and all the previous webinars. I also would like to thank you, Karen, for supporting in this webinar and the other previous webinars in the LAC region. And I'd like to thank a very big thanks to my colleague Roberta, who is being a great supporter in providing and helping me with the visual part of the presentation, and not only that, but also her guidance and her comments, which are very valuable. And I really enjoy working with her and working with Karen and working with everyone in the BOSS team. So I just want to thank them from here, to give them a big thanks that they are actually making me feel that I'm working in a very inclusive and accessible work environment. Thank you very much.
You are part of the team, Heba, no doubt at all. Huh? Thank you for how much I learned from you with those interactions.
Yes, definitely. There's always something to learn. I've been learning in each one of these sessions. Sometimes we take those things as granted. We do not really see them. And thanks to you for pointing all these things to us, so we know exactly where we need to improve.
Thank you so much. And I have learned a lot too, and I've enjoyed all the sessions I've been providing, enjoyed giving them, and enjoying interacting with you, my colleagues, and all the audience. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. Hope to see you also next Friday and the next sessions that we're having on disability inclusion. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and thank again. Take care. Thanks, Heba. Take care. All the best for you too, and Roberta.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.